Hello, welcome back. This is the third video in our series of data analysis using micro data, and that is survey data. In the two previous videos, I took you through on some of the nuances of micro data, for that matter, survey data. And the very last video before this, I took you through, we got to where we should rename our variables of interest. And as I said, if you're able to build your do file, this is how you rename the variables of interest. In our previous video, we made mention that these are the variables we want to use. And in renaming the variables, you either rename them one after the other, or you have a bulk rename. So for my first variable, which I'll type as rename, you bring the variable name in the original data set, then you will name it the way you want to easily identify the variable when you are doing your analysis. So for this variable A3, in the original set, I want to name it size, locality, firm, operate, and that is the size of the population or the locality where the firm operates, the size of the locality, whether it is a village or it is a town or a city. So anytime I'm doing my analysis, the size, locality, firm operates, I know what it is. Then the variable A4A is talking about the industry in which the firm operates, whether in manufacturing or services. So I'll just capture it as industry firm operate with the underscore after the industry. So as I said in the previous video, you either type the words without a space, or you can use underscore or dash. Whichever way, there shouldn't be a space between the words. Then the next variable is the B1, which is legal status. And that talks about the legal status of the firm. So if you rename these variables at the go, you will see that STATA would have renamed it in the original data set. So either you rename one by one, as I have here with all my variables of interest, or you can decide to have a group rename. And the group rename is to type rename. You bring in all the variables in the original data set, how it has been named, one after the other, with brackets in a bracket. Then you open another bracket and capture the names that you want to give it, each of the variables. So if the first variable is L1, you should make sure that you give it the appropriate name that you want with a space. Then the second variable, D13, you give it the name that you want to give it. Then the third variable to the fourth, fifth, up to n number of variables. So you will just have to run one, and all the variables will be renamed at once. So these are the variables that I've renamed. After renaming your variables, to help you easily identify how your variables are captured by names, the next step is to recode your variables of interest. And in recoding your variables of interest, there are two basic things you should know. One is to look for the code book. Code book will show you how the variables have been coded. If they are coded in a way that is good for you to run your analysis, you go by that. Code book is one way, or you have to use the tabulate, which is easily typed as tab. If you tabulate, it is going to tab the variables for you. Then you'll be able to determine which of the variables are not in line for you to decide on recode. So for instance, female owners, there was a question whether the firm has female owners. So that is talking about the gender of the ownership, which is at this B4. So I captured as female owners. So if you come to the recoding, if you type code book of that variable, so since we have renamed our variable, we are now going to be using the new names and not the old names in the data set. If you type the old names, Stata will not be able to identify it. This is because you have renamed the variable. So you have to always go by the new names that you give. So if you code book female owners, and that is the gender of the owner of the firm, if I execute, you could see that this is among the owners of the firm. Are there any females? So that is female ownership. So after code booking the variable, you see that missing variable, we have 24 variables missing. 24 responses missing. It means that 24 of the firms didn't indicate whether they are females or not. It means that the question was left blank. So it means that these firms, if you want to actually do analysis with ownership, gender ownership, you need to drop them because they didn't indicate whether they are males or females. Perhaps the questionnaire were left blank without being indicated. So we need to drop these guys. Then again, we have another 60 firms that say they don't know. So you are not sure whether to add them to yes or no. The question is whether they are female owners. The yes, 469 firms answered yes. That means that they have female owners. Then the 200123 answered no. They are saying that there's no female owner. The ownership of the firms are solely male. But these guys, 60, are saying they don't know. So since they don't know, we will need to also take them out. We are not sure whether they have female owners or not. So we need to take these people out. So you need to drop these guys and also drop these 24 who didn't even indicate anything. So after code booking, you'll be able to see these dynamics. Then you easily type drop if the variable is equal -9. And our -9 is the numeric value here. So drop if the variables that we have, female owners, is equal -9. So if you execute this, Stata will drop those firms, which is 60. So after executing, you see that 60 observations deleted. So Stata have dropped those firms that said they don't know. So in manipulating this variable, you need to be very, very careful because if gender is your main variables of interest, for instance, you are looking at firm ownership and firm profit, then it means that the gender becomes your dependent variable, firm ownership, the gender of ownership and the profit of a firm. So you have to drop these guys because gender matters the most in your study. So you also have to drop the 24 guys. So you type drop if female owners equal, then dot, because the numeric value here is dot. So if you drop them, Stata will tell you again that 24 observations deleted. So that is it for dropping those variables. Then if you now tabulate, if you now code book, go back to code book, the variables, you now see that we have two categories, that is yes and no. We now have yes and no. So if you tabulate that variable, if you put it in a table form, it will still going to be the yes and no. So now, these are what we are sure of about the gender of the firm. So yes means is female, no means is male. We are not done. So it means that since we have female and male, you know that yes is female and no is male. We need to also change this to reflect what we know. At any time you tabulate it, you might not know whether the yes is male or female. So if we want to change this yes or no into appropriate label of male and female, then that is where we come to say we want to now name the variable with its appropriate name, such as gender. So what you do is the first thing is to generate. So I will say that generate gender of owners equals to 0. That means you are generating a new variable. And that new variable, you are calling it the gender of owners, the gender of the firm owners. So you need these steps. First is to generate a variable called gender of owners. And the name I give this is slightly different from the word female owners. So I want to use gender of owners of the firm. So after generating this equals to 0, you need to replace gender of owners with the appropriate female owners. The idea here is that once you are generating gender equals to 0, you know that you have only two gender, that is male and female. And these are the only thing you are using. So the first category, which you represent as 0, should be either male or female. You will have to decide. So if I should say 0 should represent female, then 1 will be male. If you have a categorical variable that is more than 2 categories, in this instance, we have only 2, gender, male and female. If you have more than 2 categories, then you could have 0, 1, 2, 3, up to the nth number of the categories that you have. So for this gender, I have only 2 categories, male and female. So the first one, which is generate gender of owners equals to 0, means that that is the reference category. And that is the first category. It could be male or female, depending on what you want to do. Then the second thing is, it means that since this variable is generated 0, it means that that same variable should have 1 or 2, 3, 4, depending on where you want to stop. So the second aspect of this, after the 0, is the 1, which I'll say then replace. You are using the replace command. So it means that these variables that I've generated as 0, each one, replace it equals to 1 if the previous variable that I have, that is female owners. So replace gender of owners equals to 1 if female owners equal 2. And we know that our female owners variable, the 2 represent male, which is no, as we know. So we are easily saying that replace gender of owners equals to 1 if female owners, that is the previous variable here, is equal 2. Then when you run it, STATA will tell you that 2,123 real changes made. And that is the no, which is here, 2,123 real changes made. So it means that you are not telling, STATA is telling you that the variable, the group that have 2,123 have now been made real changes. Then, after replacing, if I were to have more than 2 categories, I would have continued as replace. Then I'll put the same variable, gender of owners, equal 2. If, then I'll have another category continue. But in this case, I have only 2 categories, which is 0 and 1. Then the next thing is to label the variable. The variable that you created, gender of owners, you need to label it. So label, the short command is lab. So we are going to label the variable gender of owners. And in labeling it, you just type lab var, label the variable gender of owners, then you put brackets open and type in full the name you want to give it, gender of owner of the firm or firm. So the lab var command, you click it, you see that STATA have now labeled the variable. The variable label is different from the variable name. In this case, this is the variable name, and gender of the owner of the firm is the variable label. When I finish, I'll show you the difference between that. Then you move further to, you have to label and define the variable. And that is, you are now defining the component of the variable, the categories. So that one, you type label, then you type define, then you type lab and the variable name. So the second lab has no space between that lab and the variable name. So if you type lab define, lab, the variable name, then you are representing 0 as you created the 0 as female. Then the 1 is male. The 1 is male because we said that in our variable that we are creating, the gender is 1 if the previous one is equal 2. And in the previous one, equal 2, which is here, was no. And we said that the no is male. So in our lab define, it will just be lab define the variable 0 with brackets open. There's no space between the brackets open and the 0. Then you type female. Then you continue 1, but there will be space after you type female, you space. Then you type 1. There's no space between the 1 and the quotation marks. Then you type male in it. So you are telling STATA that you are now labeling it the yes or no to female and male. So after labeling, you run. Then the very last one is you now label the values of the variable. The command is lab values gender of owners. That is our variable. Then you lab without a space, we end the variable. So you are now labeling the values of the variable, and that is the 2 something, the 2, 1, 2, 3, which represent our no, and the 4, 6, 9, which represent our yes. So you need to label the values too. So when you run this command, you are done. So you can now go and tabulate the variable. You tabulate, you now see that we have female and male. So your variable is now done. Female is 4, 6, 9. Male is 2, 1, 2, 3. So anytime you tabulate or you slot your variable in any regression, the gender male and female will appear. And you are okay with that. Instead of yes or no, when at a point in time, you may forget what yes and no is. Or a third person or second person cannot easily flow with your do file. So our variable is done. One thing you should know is if we go back to code book, the variable, you will now see that after we have code book, you will now see that we have female as 0 and male as 1. In our previous variable, we were having female, male as 1 and 2. 1 and 2. And the 1, as we said, is female, and the 2 is male. If you slot this in a regression, with the 1 and 2, and let's say the variable gender is your independent variable, it's one of your independent variables, STATA will pick the one with the highest, which is male, as the base category, and delete the rest. Then you are now going to interpret your regression result with reference to the one STATA has deleted. But what we have done here is that we are making female the base category, and that is 0. So when you run the regression, STATA will have to take this out. Then you now compare male owners to female owners. You can change the base category at any time you want. But if you don't change it, STATA would automatically use the category that has the highest frequency. And that could be male in this category, in this case. So if you have some other variable, we have so many variables. I want us to take through some other variables, which is almost the same. For instance, we are looking at the legal status of a firm. And the legal status, if you code book it, you'll see that we have firms that have indicated that they are shareholding company with shares traded in the stock market. Some other firms indicated they are shareholding company with non-traded shares. Others are also sole proprietorship kind of business. Others are partnership. Others too are limited partnership. Then this category are saying other, and the other could be anything. That is not shareholding, that is not sole proprietor, that is not partnership, but it's other business, perhaps family sponsored or whichever way. Then we have these top guys, 60. They are also saying they don't know. So if legal status of the firm is one of your major variables, maybe you want to see a shareholding firm versus sole proprietorship firms versus partnership firms, which of them makes more profit? That is, if profit is what is your goal, then you need to drop these guys because they didn't indicate where they are or where they belong. If you are not also sure of these guys who say other, and your interest is on only shareholding and sole proprietorship firms and partnership firms, then you need to drop these guys too, because they are not part of the categories that we have. So in my study, I decided to drop the legal status, the don't know guys, which is the 60. They are gone. So after you do that, it's the same procedure that you have to do with the gender variable, as we said. So this one has more than 2 categories. So generate legal status underscore new. That is a new variable I'm giving after the legal status variable. Then because it has more than 2 categories, you say replace legal status underscore new 1 if this is that. Then replace legal status underscore new equals to 2. That is the third category. If legal status equals to 2, then replace legal status underscore new equals to 3. If, then I put all this together. In this particular do file, what I did is that I decided to combine 4, 5, and 6 as partnership, because these guys, 183 are saying they are partnership firm, 149 are saying limited partnership, it is still partnership. Then these other people, I simply added them to the partnership. Then I have shareholding firms with share traded and shareholding firms without shares traded. You could also combine these two as shareholding firms, whether traded or non-traded, it's still shareholding. Then sole proprietor, then partnership, you add this. And mean you have only 3 categories: shareholding, sole proprietorship, and partnership, depending on the objectives of your study. But in this do file, what I did is to have sole proprietorship as a loan, shareholding with traded shares, shareholding without trade, then partnership. Decided to separate shareholding with trade and without trade because a firm that is shareholding with trade could easily mobilize funds to boost their capacity and, for that matter, increase productivity than a firm without shareholding. A firm with shareholding that is traded could easily also be listed on the stock market. And when you list on the stock market, you could easily get international shareholding. And this could boost your technology transfer and what have you. So that is why I decided to separate it. So as I said, it depends on your objective of the study. So this is how you go through in naming your recoding your variables. Let me take you through the last recoding, then we are done. This one is talking about the year established. In this data, I wanted to know the number of years the firm is in operation, but the number of years in operation was not captured in the data. But the year the firm was established was rather indicated. So I use that to calculate the number of years the firm has been in operation since its establishment. So the first thing, I code book this, and they will tell you that these are the number of years. Some were established in 1987, others 1997, 2001, 2005. So if you pick the firms that are 2005, from that time to the survey year, which is 2014, you could easily get the number of years that firm has been in operation. So this is a bit complex than the agenda that we did. So if you code book, you will still see that it ranges from -9, and the -9 are those who are indicating that they don't know the year it was established, or they didn't indicate anything. So as usual, we need to drop these guys. You drop them, there are 188 firms. So now you will need to get your year, your base year. So the year ranges from 1987 to 2014, the year of the survey. So I will say generate year _0 if year established is less than or equal to 2007. I took 2007 as the base. Then you replace year established equals to 1 _new equals to 1 if year established is greater than 1987, which is this. Then I'd wanted to have firms that are 5 years or less and firms that are 5 years and above. So from 2007 to 2014, the data was 2014, but the survey, the data collection year was 2012. Then the data was published in 20. So that is 5 years. From 2007 to 2012 is the 5 years. So I wanted to see those that are 5 years or less and those that are above 5 years. So if you define years in operation, 5 years or less, 5 years above, at the end, I would have firms that are 5 years or less are this, firms that are 5 years and above are 2,000 out of the total firms. So if you now code book year, you see that we have only 2 categories: firms that have spent 5 years or less and firms that are above 5 years. If the data had already captured the years the firm is in operation firms would have mentioned 1, 2, 3, and that would have been a continuous variable. It would have been easy to use. But they just asked when the firm was established. And I decided to, in our paper, we decided to make it 5 years or less and 5 years above. We did that because, as I said, everything you do should be backed by intuition. We are having the belief that most countries in Africa, firms that are below 5 years usually get an incentives to boost them to be able to grow up and participate. So they have incentives like tax holidays or no taxation. So I wanted to see firms that are below 5 years and they have this kind of tax enjoyment. Are they able to make headway as against firms that are 5 years and above? So this is where we've gotten to. And in the next video, I will show you how to go about regressing the variables. Once you are done with this variable renaming and recoding, then the next thing is to prepare your variables for possible regression. So thank you so much, and I'll meet you in the next video to share with you how to generate some other variables, and for that matter, how to get your dependent and independent variable and possible run some regression. Thank you so much. Stay connected to DIDEC for more on data analysis. Thank you.